We are in Juterbog, in Germany, a small, quiet German town, typical like so many others, except this has an incredible military history. The town was mentioned for the first time in 1007 in the chronicles of Archbishop Tino von Magdeburg. As a village settlement with a castle wall, it was referred to as Juterbog for the first time. Now the town grew rapidly due to trading. Over the centuries, it saw hospitals, monasteries built and burned. It saw famines and fires and wars, and even a visit from Martin Luther. Now, the battles of the 30 and the 7-Year War left its mark on the small town, not just due to the fighting here, but also due to the looting by foreign armies from time to time, such as after the Battle of Jena and Austerlitz, where the French troops moved through Juterbog on their way to Berlin. In 1824, as a way out of economic hardship, the citizens here asked for soldiers to be stationed, and in 1832, as part of the Prussian 3rd Artillery Brigade, was billeted here. In 1841, Juterbog rail station was opened to the Berlin-Anhalt Railway. From 1864, the artillery was stationed here in Juterbog, and it had its own firing range, and 2 barrack camps was also purchased by the Prussian military in 1870. The Juterbog Artillery School was founded here, and in 1893 the town was connected to the Royal Prussian Military Railway. Now also a large munitions production plant and storage was constructed here, and it was constantly expanded and grew all the way up until after World War II. Now there were 2 main camps constructed here over the years. Of course, the first one, the Altes Lager, old camp, and then the new one, Neues Lager, referred to as Adolf Hitler Lager, and you may probably have seen or heard videos from there, but that is not the one we're going to today. Altes Lager is not a particularly welcoming or easy to get to place, and it's guarded by a lot of men with guns. During World War I, there were 2 airship hangars here as well. There was an airfield that was further expanded in 1933 and 34, and also there was a communications school, intelligence school, motorized balloon unit, for weather, and there were several assault gun units here. One of them was Assault Gun Battalion 236. Someone here has written a book about them. There was also a technical aviation school. There's a lot of military going on here besides just the firing ranges and the munitions production. After the war, various Soviet units were stationed here at Juterbog, and they used the range and the facilities until the end of the Cold War, when for the first time there was no longer any military in town. Remember when I said munitions production plant? Very, very large, and it was very, very interesting, and it was connected to the artillery range. And we're going to go there because I bet none of you have seen this before. These are munitions production buildings that were built at some point in time. We are not entirely clear on exactly which ones were which and what they were for. We're going into the brush. There are things I want to see if I can find, such as some of the bunkers that the Germans tested their munitions on before the possible invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1938. So we're up in the morning, had good breakfast, and I was told to leave my comfortable production BMW behind because he had a alternate and better means of transport where we're going to go and see if we can find what remains of the old barracks. I guess we are taking the best the Russians had to offer. So this is it. This is the production vehicle for today.
Yes, it is.
The markings look a little East German to me.
You alright?
I love it. One of the things that you need to understand about this particular city, as it was a purpose-built city for the military. This was a military town. This was constructed for military use, for artillery, I'm assuming cavalry as well back in the day. This is not like most towns you would know that starts with a homestead and you build one house, 2 houses, there's a railroad. This was built for military training and education and soldiers and existed as such for many decades. So everything around here all the features and the nature, except the new things they're building and those ridiculous windmills, is all one way or another related to the military, which makes it interesting to walk the terrain, the forests here, because while it was built 100 years ago or 50 years ago, or while the Russians were here on the DDR, it had some relation to military history. Before the invasion of Czechoslovakia, that didn't really quite happen, 1938, the German army had practiced on similar bunker structures to that of the Czechoslovakian fortifications. What would it take to destroy them? So they built a whole bunch of different bunkers that could withstand different calibers of weaponry that they trained with out here on their heavy weapons range. And we're hoping to see if we can find those, because it shows a little bit of the training they did, the weapons they tested, and of course the survivability inside. Now I understand why we had to switch vehicles. It makes so much more sense now.
That is a Russian build. It's not interesting.
You see these structures that pops out of nowhere. This was Russian built too?
No, I don't.
It looks more civilian.
But there was not any civilian use in this area.
Okay, there's something big. What is...
What purpose do they have to fulfill? But this is a very good example for a Russian building. You see the kind of, they use the bricks to each other. That's not the German style, that's not the European style, that's the Russian style. This is less strong because they are not shift in each other.
Russian military buildings, that they are put together quickly, cheaply. There's a lot of them.
I think this is German built.
I think that. What the hell is that?
Hier war der Bahnhof.
The Bahnhof?
Ja, der Verlag, Verlag.
I gotta show you this because you don't see a lot of buildings left in the middle of nowhere. Those built at the time of the Kaiser. This was the old railroad station. That was built for the train transports. I don't think there's any tracks here anymore. But it's still a beautiful old building. I think the windows are still there, which is rather cool. I'm curious to see if there's any writing on the wall. That looks fairly new. That wood looks so new. Damn. You see here where the arches would have been. I'm assuming the trains would have been out there. Now, I did notice an antenna on the roof. Oh, dude. This is 100 plus years old. Now, I'm looking at this roof. I know there's a hole in it, but the wood looks very, very well preserved, which is actually interesting. And here I'm looking at the railroad tracks that are coming. So this must have been a small, narrow gauge railroad that would have come in here, possibly stopped here. It's a building that would be interesting to find out more about, but if I'm looking at it, this is a fairly small door. A train, full train, not even a freight train would have been able to make it through here. This would have been a smaller loading. This looks like the drains for what used to be cables, but it's probably not. Look at the woods, and you see the mounds that would probably have been the dividers between the railroad tracks. There must have been a narrow gauge railroad in here. This is definitely purpose built with an edge to it that's didn't even fall down from the ceiling. Stained tile. Okay, what do we get through? Can't get through anyway. Alright, camera first, lead the way. Yeah, this is the old railroad platform. Come! We got a lot to do and a lot to see. But this is just a windmill. And noticing there are pieces of metal sticking out of the ground. This is the platform. The train would come in here. And there's another big ass building. Damn. What a place. What a place. Now, notice there's an antenna sticking up there. This is really something else. Ow. This is a really interesting building. And you got... Now, it's possible the Russians used this. I'm certain that Germans used it during World War II. And here's the railroad track. These are... Now look at the spacing of these tracks. Look at how far apart they are. And that 12 up there looks a bit Russian. Station here. I see this mound. And I see that mound over there. If there's not something in there, I would be very surprised. Unless they're built up as shelters. It's right up there. There's a chimney sticking up, or some piece of structure on top of it.
This place was connected with two railway lines. One coming in, there's a station, and in the distance another going out. We will see it a little bit later. And in between there are a lot of buildings with an unknown purpose, connecting with the production of ammunition. And between these buildings there was a small railroad active. Over there I just found some traces of the small railroad.
This is, as I thought, used by every military since, and narrow gauge railroad between the bunkers. This is just fascinating place. There's so many buildings here.
This is part of the small railroad, you see?
Oh yes. And it was unmounted on the blocks.
Well, I don't know, but
I'm guessing.
There's another piece. We can believe the old small railroad go something this way. That's how wide it was. And the tracks are mounted in this and in this position.
Oh, that's how. So, so this is the cross beam that you put the tracks
that's
on.
The cross beam, and the tracks are going this direction.
Okay, that makes sense.
There are two others.
Oh, so we definitely have a direction.
There, and there's another.
And this direction is leading straight to the rail station down there.
Yes.
And then, of course, the ammunition bunker is in here, one of them. And it is interesting, we all know, those of you who know me, that when he said building unknown purpose, he had my complete and undivided attention.
Some ammunition, because around this building they are very important. You see, there's a wall around this building.
Yeah, this is completely engulfed on all sides. And I get with the railroad track probably coming into something coming in between these two mounds here. Das ist auch von der Zeit von dem Kaiser.
You see the roof construction, that's original end of the 19th century. This building must be part of the ammunition plant, but I can't say exactly what purpose it was good for. Be careful, there's a hole.
I have noticed on these trips through Germany and Poland and everywhere else, there's always a hole somewhere in the ground.
That means watch your step.
You mean don't back up like I was just doing?
There's a bad hole. Look at this. I could not recommend to jump in.
So I see yellow bricks inside. I see a hallway, what looks like.
I have just YouTube.
Well, since my very first amateur video where I didn't bring a flashlight, people have been making fun of me ever since, so. There's a hallway, something mounted on, oh well. Well, there's attachments for ladders down and what looks like for electrical cables. So something would have been down here, and if these are rails, then there would probably have been a sliding door on these rails, so you would have at least temporary, easier access. That's me guessing from looking at it. Does that sort of make sense from what we're looking at? There could have been a plate here that could slide to the side so you can get access.
This installation was in use for more than 100 years. I can't find out very quickly what it was good for. Therefore, I had to collect more information. The frame is from metal, and it is secure glass. That's the window for a workshop. So you can be sure this was a workshop area.
That's true. My great-granddad had an auto shop in Denmark, and these are the windows I remember when I was a kid. So the building is somewhat symmetrically set up. You have the building is set up very symmetrical on both sides. We have similar gates there, and in the back have doors, so maybe something would come in and be processed and then move out. It will be interesting to know what happened here. And of course, just because it was built back then by the Kaiser, they would have different manufacturing processes that they would for World War II, that would have different needs for when the Russians were here. So it could have been repurposed several times over, but the stone looks the same. And there's a green color to this, so that was probably, it's hard to tell, but this definitely was painted. And here's, oh, this is the,
on both sides are the same holes.
so the building is completely symmetrical on both sides. There's one. Another hole, and then the other one is further back there.
And there are also the tracks to slide the cover.
There you go, yeah. So the building is completely identical on both sides. That's interesting. This is very interesting. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing any writing on anything. Here's what, now this is just boarded up as well. And you have the green military colored doors. And then just attachment on the wall. It's just a metal door. Yeah, whatever. That would have been some type of a front office. This block could be new. It looks newer. Wow.
Looks like a name. What I can read is Petrov.
So Petrov was here in 1964. or to 1964.
This is an ammunition box for AK-74.
This is?
The small one. I know these boxes. These boxes contained about 1020 rounds. Inside you can see the original green painting. Outside it is rusty, but I know these boxes.
Yeah. So he was a crane, or looks like what would have been could have been a sliding. Then again. Huh. What are they?
No. That was to prevent fires or to fight fires. In this hut there was sand to extinguish a fire, and you see at the wall these are the what do we call it? Fire extinguisher 1 and 2, and in between I think there was an axe and a shovel.
And also that these are red would be significant, because, yeah.
And this was the cover for the sand. If you need to use the sand in winter time when it's very cold, it's important that the sand is dry. Yeah. Otherwise you can't use it. Mm-hmm. And therefore they covered the sand with a cover.
So what's that thing up there?
What's the backwards?
I know there's the hole in the ground, because there's always a hole in the ground behind me, and there's always well, there's one way to find out. Some of this has fallen down because it's sitting down there. This is slight. Well, there's nothing to it. Held together with a little rebar on the bottom. Some of it's trickling down there. And here's another bunker over there. Or something, some structure. Here's.
But it's fulfilled with sand.
I wonder how deep that was made by bricks. See, after this trip there will be a new t-shirt slogan. There's always a hole behind you. So there's another little building. That looks different. Let's see if I can just squeeze through this. Does this look, this looks more Russian, doesn't it?
The Russians take the number and this building numbers.
So here's another one of those blocks sitting up there. Did you see writing on this? Because there's one there, there's none there, and there's one over there. Which is, again, you got a symmetry to the pattern, which I'm building number 5. And here's another hole in the ground.
I believe it was a technical installation. It had to do with ammunition, because I think the walls should protect the area outside these buildings. If there's an blew up, an explosion, the area outside should be protected.
So this is in there. See what looks like a lot of wall attachments. For some reason, after the Russian left here, half of Holland came here to scrap the metal. Now, I've been to Holland. I really did not know that you had a fascination for old military metal. Could you bring it back? There's another hall over there that looks identical to the one we were just in. And then you have this, which could have been administration. I'm guessing light. Yeah, this was for the electricity coming down, switch in there. The roof is fairly determined to come down soon. which is, I guess, what it is. But the brick walls still sturdy. Of course they should be. They were built a long time ago. So here's the other door with a lot of indentations. It looks technical to me, but there are so many buildings or so many different functions from so many different eras. And there was electricity here, obviously, and some of these grooves in the walls looked like they would be to attach electrical components. Yeah, the wood looks good. That is another hall just like the one we came from. Or...
But as you can see over there, it seems these buildings are connected with each other underground.
That, they think that, yeah.
Follow me, I will show you. Two other holes. They look like...
If there was a tunnel, are they long enough for air ventilation need?
I don't know what was in the tunnel, but we had holes there, and we have holes there, and there are some iron.
Oh yes.
Helping going in, coming out.
Oh, that, yeah, that is definitely a tunnel. Yeah, that's definitely deep enough a tunnel for either people, maybe
cable, and for a pipeline or for more pipelines.
Yeah, but it's big enough for a person to be able to crawl, almost walk through, if not crawl through.
I think so, because you have this iron to help you in and out. It seems that personnel was used this hole to come in a tunnel.
Yeah, there was at least access whatever was through here. And here's another part of it.
And Fred said, over there's one building after the other.
Yeah.
And this, on the roof, this box, is definitely for ventilation.
Yeah, and all these symmetric buildings, probably maybe administration in there, something with the communication. Well, this is a fascinating area.
Something came here by train, and I assume something get out by train. It looks like a train station for loading and unloading goods. That's the level you can go straight into the wagon, in and out.
It looks in a little better shape than on the other side, but very similar. Yes.
If you look around, between the buildings, always concrete parts, always covers, always holes.
And he's not kidding. There were hundreds of buildings erected here. Wherever you go, wherever you look, there's a part, there's a hatch, there's a something underground. This is... There's the ramps. Remember those poles I keep telling you guys about that you see in the middle of military fencing around here? And when I say around here, I guess I mean Western Europe.
The Russians had not enough space in their barracks, and if they have in this area 100% personnel, in the barracks usually only was space for 2/3 of them, and 1/3 was sent out in the woods to live for a limited time in the woods, and after weeks or after months it was changed with another third from the barracks. They came in and another third of the barracks came out.
And the Russians, I seem to remember, only got paid what, 50 Ostdeutsch Mark a month?
15.
15. 15?
15, yes.
So they got paid nothing, they had nothing, they couldn't drink, they did get a week's leave a year. It sucked to be a Russian soldier. This is the old school for the kids of the soldiers that were stationed here.
Say not the soldiers, but the officers.
The officers' kids.
Of course, the private soldiers.
They don't have family.
No. I can't describe how fascinating it is to drive through here. Damn, seriously. I mean, damn.
While talking nonsense, we miss one interesting object.
Yes, I'm so glad I wasn't filming when I screamed, "Stop the car now!" Hole underground. Hey, buddy, there's the thing in here.
It's not this type of bunker we are looking for. We are on the way to the important bunker.
So we're going to investigate this unimportant bunker that looks really cool. This looks post-war.
Like some extra.
Is this got to be Russian?
Yes, I would. I don't know.
Jeez.
Exactly. I say I don't know because this.
Da ist Strom drin.
Ja, natürlich. Jetzt schaltet hier die Licht an. But this electrical wire doesn't look like a Russian area.
Does this look like old World War II?
It looks like the 30s.
I'm gonna be a dick. I'm gonna be that guy. This is very, very huge and a very, very nice temperature and extremely well built. Now what is this?
Da war ein Ventilator von draußen, habe ich gesehen.
So there's a ventilation through the entire area. And it's very hard to explain.
But I think they had a strong ventilation.
Guck mal, da guckt man erstmal, wie stark die Wände sind.
You can imagine how thick the walls are.
Yeah. So this is, what are we looking at? 1 Meter, 1,5? So this is Baustärke 3. No, that's okay. This is the ventilation shaft for this huge dome that we're not entirely sure what is or where it was from. Is that a one? Nope, that's not even one. Yeah.
Old style electrical installation. That China?
Yeah, Porcelain.
Porzellan, ja.
Und das ist welche Jahr?
Das ist der,
Dritte Reich oder? Third Reich? Or?
if there was electrification, it could be from the early 20th century. Aber I would guess 1910, before World War I.
This bunker could have be that old?
Yes. I saw bunkers that they are definitely 120, 130 years, and the quality of concrete is like this. Also,
And that's why the Japanese wanted to learn from the Germans about concrete because here's the outside ventilation shafts. But these are the little things you miss.
one door here, the second door here, and the third door covered the whole entrance.
Okay, so this was more important than just dry storage.
Also I assume it was for explosives,
Yeah.
and I assume also the roof could be weak and the walls are strong. In case of an explosion, the power, the pressure goes up, and the areas left and right of this are protected.
That makes sense. Yes,
But
because the
3
walls
doors.
are very thick.
If I think it is interesting to see 3 doors. I saw before 2 doors, but not 3 doors.
Die haben sie gleich rausgeholt. Der hat bestimmt ein paar Zentner gebracht, die Türen.
Oh. These are very old style Holzdübel. In the early times when they had to put something on a wall, There was no Fischerdübel, no plastic dübel, but this kind of Holzdübel. Das musst du noch erkennen, war Freddy?
So
Ja,
this,
ja,
this
das haben wir noch verarbeitet, haben wir noch
yeah.
die Türen
In this
eingesetzt.
box, I think there was an electrical installation, and this
Yeah, there's a,
it was for the cable, and there you can see some remains of an electrical installation. I think it is like tear, and it was sticked over there.
what electrical would there have been in the early 1900s? If you have light?
If it depends on what time they got electrification. I don't know. It could be around 1910, but it could be around 1920. Not 1920 was after the World War
Yeah.
I. Ammunition parts to bring in and ready ammunition to bring out. They used the railway system.
Putting ramps. So it makes sense that where we are now is looking at the munition huts, and we're driving on what used to be the old railroad tracks.
These are definitely ammunition huts.
And the road is probably an old railroad track, because we are a little elevated from the forest floor on both sides, and sometimes a lot.
And you can see around these huts we just passed, there was a fence, an extra fence.
And we're already within a fenced-off area. Oh yeah, here's a separate double. So separate fencing within the already secure military area. And this is old barbed wire. This is not new Russian.
No, I would expect it could be Russian.
The fencing must be post-original building, post-war, because holy hell, hole in the ground.
It was for water firefighting.
That would be. Now that we see the railroad tracks, we now know what direction the railroads went. And as they had to go past every one of the munition storage houses up to the ramp, the barbed wire fence was crossing that, so it must have been post-construction, post-war. So obviously there would not have been a barbed wire fence across the railroad.
Yeah, but these type of tracks, I believe, are from the official railroad system in Germany. That means the connection from these ammunition huts to the outside was by a regular railway.
And then the military had its own separate either area or...
Over there we had the traffic between one house, between the houses. And I believe that's for the traffic outside the whole area, to bring it to other parts of Germany using the official railroad system.
Makes sense.
And a raised building with a platform. Here it's easy to see.
It's a roof.
65 has a roof.
I like number 65. Let's take a look.
We just left the ammunition plant over there, and we have the points where the produced ammunition was stored and waited for collecting by train to send to other parts of Germany or to send to the front line. And there was a time the ammunition has to store it inside, and it was necessary to keep it absolutely dry. And for this purpose, the ground of the hut was not on the ground, but was lifted 1 meter and a little bit. So between the ground and the hut there was always some air to keep it dry, and at the same time the ramp was erected as high as the wagons are, which took the ammunition out of the huts into the wagon, and that was one height level. And it was easy to bring the ammunition in and out.
So this was all about moisture.
That's all about moisture. The Russians had their own building system. They had an installation. The installation had a name and a number, and within the installation the buildings became Russian numbers. Aber kennst du auch die Story? Tino, there's a story, I remember. Some guys I know, they went in the 90s, in the early 90s, in this area and looked beneath these huts, and they found a box with pistols. But it was, there were a large number of guys who know about it, so they was afraid to do some illegal job and gave it to the police. But it would be always interesting to crawl beneath this hut and look what is left.
And that's why we're coming back. That's why we came back with less people. Great, yeah.
I believe it was erected before World War I.
Always keep your powder dry. And this is the perfect building to do that. And it's still in very good shape, actually, despite the fact it's been abandoned.
As you can see over there, there's another fence with barbed wire. And we are already in a fenced off area. And when we found in this area another fence, you have an indicator for a higher level of security.
Out here, the Russians also had a missile repair and maintenance shop for several of their short-round ballistic missiles, including the Scud. And an interesting point is you'll see everywhere there's an antenna sticking up on the ground. It's here, everywhere. Again, this was to prevent lightning from entering the buildings, to guide them away. The Russians really did have a thing about lightning, something I've never seen in any of our Western manuals or on our barracks, but it made its way into the Russian manual to always protect buildings from lightning. That was a big deal, and I'm curious if there was something that had happened in the past in Russia that made that such a pivotal part of construction. This was where the tanks were practicing fire. Really big building, looks like it was built by the Russians, but it's large. Let's see what we got here. Nothing better than shooting big guns. Unfortunately, they are gone.
Tank shooting range. The tanks came in backwards, and there was a platform. They could change the angle of the platform, and the tanks shooting in this direction. And at the tower, there was something who watched the fire and gave them instruction to change the site, to change the position.
This was Russian?
That was Russian. You see, we look from the outside, you see the scheme of the bricks. That's absolutely Russian.
What did the Russians have here? They had the Su-80? No.
No, they had, I believe, most of the time 64.
Yeah.
Because the 72 was not in the use of the Russian army, it was for export, for example, to East German army. And the 64 was the most advantage tank the Russian had at this time. And it was only replaced by the T-80, but very slowly, because the 64 was a very good tank.
So the 72 was never used by the Russians?
No.
I did not know that. We learn something every day. This must have been a very large piece of machinery sitting in here. to move the tanks around.
They just came in backwards, and what was changed was the angle of up and down and left and right.
That still takes a bit of power to do that. And then somewhere way down there with all the overgrown stuff.
1,000 meter and more. There was nothing, just sand. And you could see the targets. You can go upstairs, you can try a look from above.
Yeah.
That's completely Russian. The Germans did never use this scheme over miles.
Yeah. And now we have trees in the way. Damn you, nature. There's another similar on the other side. It is really hard to find these bunkers because last time he was here was some 20 years ago, and obviously last time the German army fired shells at it was 75 years ago. And it's very overgrown. I'm not even sure I can send up a drone to see through the treetops.
Take a measurement on the map, which direction and which distance, and maybe we can find out coordinates.
So we're in the outskirts of the impact range, of the target range. Are we still circling the impact range, or are we getting into it?
The impact range is to our left. That's one of the bunkers we are looking for. We have found one.
Yay! I think it's awesome. We actually found one. So this is built to the Czech design to shoot at.
I believe not all of them are the Czech design, because that was actual in the 30s. And the first bunkers erected here was at the 1990.
And these were observation bunkers to observe the impacts.
The first bunkers were observation bunkers. Before World War I fired in this area, the Germans of the Wehrmacht in the 30s and 40s, and the Russians did the same.
Unless somebody came up with a shell that'll make a square hole, I think this may be the door.
I think that's the entrance.
That's what I'm thinking. But if you look around here, these would be impact holes.
Yes, but
this is direct fire, isn't it? This is not.
But it could be splinters.
Yeah. But whatever hit this straight on, not an artillery shell.
I believe it was an emergency exit, because it was inside, protected by a strong door, which not could reach by direct fire, because there's an angle. You see what kind of door closed this entrance. And another thing you should look at, look to the roof. There the kalk, what you have in old bunkers. Take a step forward and look at the roof. You see, that's the kalk.
Yeah.
You have in old buildings.
Yes.
Made from concrete.
Of course, they put up a little wall so we. Okay, so you sit in here,
This wall you are before in front of you, that's not original.
Oh, I know, it's to keep people like me out.
Yes.
I'm fully well aware what they're doing. So this could be the bathroom, which you might need if you're going to sit in here, have people shoot shells at you.
I think
Now here's the open door to the outside without the wall on the other side. Okay, so I can walk out here. So these...
And I have an air screen. These the other side open.
Oh. You see the solid roof that we've seen with the beams, heavy-duty beams, we've seen so many times before. And here, one of the beds in here. Interesting. Okay, something happened here. We don't know enough of the construction of these things, but things were mounted all the walls, certainly. A lot of things protruding from the walls, and again observation slits. This was made to observe the artillery range, so there'll obviously be telephone or radio connections. I can't believe this is access control. This is not a bunker like we see a fighting position, where you would need firing slits so you could you need a firing slit so you could defend it. You wouldn't need to defend this. This was purely observation for training. But there would have been communication. And you see the walls are honestly not quite as well. Wait a minute. Here's the thickness of the actual walls. Sort of see, we're looking at what looks like a meter and a half, which would be build strength 3, I believe. Alright, there's also a wasp nest. Okay, so you see, this is roughly how thick it is. That's about a meter. This is about, yeah, a meter, I think. I suppose something could have come through there, but I doubt it. Here's the closed off. Well, something could have penetrated there, but it's possible. But we don't have the books for what actually was fired at it. And here's the outside of the observation slits. Obviously, being an artillery range, there would be possibility of unexploded pieces of ordnance around. So here's my advice. All of us have military experience. We have experience with arms and explosives. We have some rudimentary idea of how to handle it. If you don't, at least try to stay away from things you don't identify, you can't recognize, and be safe.
This is an area I will definitely come back to. There are a lot of bunkers out here, and the munition factory is almost completely undocumented and no photos could be found so far. So we're going to go back here and look through more of it. In 1917, as part of the Hindenburg program, 50 more hectares had been purchased, 32 more buildings had been constructed, 43 roads, 22 massive ammunition storages, and far more bunkers and shooting ranges. This is a place we will get back to.